everyone, welcome back to Nails Before Films. Only two movies left in my 2023 review. Yay! This is actually a good one. Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse. This movie is great, especially in a year when the superhero genre was dying. I think it's the only superhero movie in 2023 that is universally loved by the audience. However, it's not a perfect film, and let's go through the negatives first. First of all, the movie doesn't need to be 2 hours and 20 minutes. Well, I wasn't bored. Some parts feel a bit too long or repetitive. For example, the conflict between Miles and his parents is a bit repetitive throughout the movie. We get it, it's difficult to be Spider-Man and have to lie to your parents about it. They don't understand what you're doing, you don't know how to tell them, and you want to quote-unquote spread your wings. I'm not saying it's bad. I do like the family emphasis in this movie, but it doesn't need to be repeated so often. I remember when rewatching it with my mom during the part where Miles's mom was talking to him after Gwen had left. My mom said, "Ugh, this again?" Like I said, we get the idea. There's no need to keep having these conversations over and over again. The first part of the movie could really use some trimming. I feel like the movie should be around 2 hours. As I mentioned before, it never got to the point that I was getting impatient or bored, but it could benefit from being more efficient with the storytelling, especially when you compare it to Into the Spiderverse, which managed to tell a complete, compelling story within 1.5 hours. Next, I really have some questions about the so-called canon events and the collapsing of universes. So I think what Miguel means is that since Miles Morales was never meant to be Spider-Man, he's an anomaly everywhere he goes. So if universes could collapse if canon events are interrupted, does this mean Miles's universe could collapse just because he exists? And the one where there's no Spider-Man could collapse too? If the universe adjusts itself like the original Peter Parker having to die because of Miles, then why does it matter if someone interrupts the canon events? Shouldn't the universe just find a way around it? For example, the universe could find another way to kill the captain even though Miles saved him. Then the canon event still happened, right? So maybe universes can only collapse if someone from another universe interrupts the canon events. But that brings me back to my original question. Since Miles was bitten by a spider that's from another universe, then his universe could collapse just because he exists? Also, if he's not meant to be Spider-Man, why do the Spider-Man canon events apply to him? Also, since Miles was bit by the Earth 42 spider and the scanner sent him to Earth 42 because it identified the spider's origin, why doesn't Miles glitch in his own universe if part of him is actually from another universe? Also, since Gwen's dad is not the captain anymore, is the canon event disrupted? Or is the person who took over his position going to die now? If the latter is true, then that's kind of terrible. It's like saying, oh well, someone has to die, at least it won't be my dad. Anyway, that's just some of the questions that popped up when I was watching the film. Hopefully they'll explain it better and address these issues in the next film. My next problem with this movie is with Spider-Man 2099 or Miguel O'Hara. I really like him, and I don't like how they made him the bad guy in this movie. From the after credits scene in the last movie, he seemed like a really fun guy. He was playing the Spider-Man pointing meme with the cartoon Spider-Man. But in this one, he's suddenly very grumpy, very sulky, and just depressed in general. It makes sense given his backstory, but I was just not ready for it. And I don't like how he's so mean towards Miles. I feel like he knows that it isn't Miles' fault, but he's just really stressed out. When he sent Gwen back to her universe, she said to him, "We're supposed to be the good guys." Before Miguel answered, I actually thought to myself, they are though. While he's technically the villain in the story, I can't help but feel like he's just trying his best to do what's good, and I understand where he's coming from. I really like him. I mean, come on, he's a hot, muscular, daddy type of character. It's impossible for me not to like him. I just hope his conflict with Miles gets resolved properly in the next movie. Speaking of which, let's get to my last complaint, which is a minor one, but still a complaint no less. I would prefer that they make it obvious that this is only the first part. The story is not finished in this movie. Like I said in my last video, a few people clapped after the movie ended, but most of us were just kind of shocked and confused. I remember when the chase with all of the spider people happened, I was like, the movie is ending soon, right? But why doesn't it feel like it? Can they really finish on time? And when it didn't finish, I felt a bit cheated. I would prefer they did it like Dead Reckoning, where they explicitly told you it was only part 1. I don't have a problem with them doing a 2-part movie. I just wish I knew this beforehand. I know this isn't a huge issue and the movie is still great, but it did make me feel a bit annoyed the first time I finished watching it. Oh, actually, one last thing. It's a shame that the music isn't as memorable in this movie as the last one. I love the songs in Into the Spiderverse and how well they accompanied the scenes. I get goosebumps whenever I rewatch Into the Spiderverse and What's Up Danger starts playing. It's not a big deal, but because of how much I love the songs in Into the Spiderverse, I wish they kept that aspect in this movie. Anyway, now that the negatives are out of the way, let's talk about the positives. Pretty much everything else is great. The overall story is fine. The animation is absolutely amazing. There's humor and emotions, and it makes the audience excited for the next film, which is something superhero movies fail to do for quite some time now. Except for the problems I mentioned, I like the story a lot. When the first 20 minutes of the movie were about Gwen Stacy, I was worried that they would make her the main character and push Miles aside. Fortunately, they didn't do that. While Gwen has plenty of screen time in this one, she's still a side character. The story is still Miles's. While I complained about the length, I do like how important Miles's parents are to him and how they support and encourage him. It's relatable and heartwarming. Oh, and I really like Spot for some reason. He's so cute in the beginning, and even after he became powerful and more malicious, it's understandable. I feel bad for him, and he's much more likable and redeemable than Kingpin. Not that there's anything wrong with Kingpin. He served as a great, intimidating villain in the first movie. I'm just happy the bad guy is much more different this time. Anyway, I can't say too much about the story because it's unfinished, but I'm confident that they can wrap it up in a satisfying way in the next film, whenever it'll come out. Next, the animation is incredible as expected. The first movie really revolutionized 3D animation, and while this one didn't really do that, it was still amazing to look at. I appreciate how many different spider people and creatures they created. They were fun and creative. And while I had trouble understanding him when I watched the movie for the first time, Spider-Punk's effect is so freaking cool. I think it's great how they try different things in this movie. For example, Gwen's universe has a more watercolor feel to it. So while it wasn't as revolutionary as the first film, it is still really amazing. I only watched 3 superhero movies last year, The Flash, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and Across the Spiderverse. I didn't even bother to check out the other ones. Out of the 3, the first one was hot garbage, the second one was decent, and Spiderverse is the only one I truly loved. It's great to see that even though people are getting tired of the superhero genre and companies keep pumping out suboptimal products, audiences will still show up for a superhero film if you give them a movie with great visuals, a well-written story, and good characters. I don't think most people have been excited about superhero movies ever since Endgame, but this film successfully made audiences want to watch the next one. Everyone who left the theater wanted to know what would happen to Miles next, and that's admirable. Besides superhero films, this movie is also a huge win for animations. It's honestly so satisfying to see Sony being better at animated movies than Disney. Elemental was a flop at first and definitely not the hit they were hoping for. Wish, which was supposed to be their 100th anniversary celebration film, was a huge flop and panned by both audiences and critics. While Super Mario did extremely well, it's more for kids and gamers. It's nice to see an animated film not targeted at kids doing exceptionally well at the box office. Overall, Across the Spider-Verse is a movie that again demonstrates why people like the superhero genre and animations. While I still like Into the Spider-Verse better because I was blown away by the animation when I first watched it and the story is very tightly written, Across the Spider-Verse is a great sequel. It's a shame they have to postpone the next movie due to the strike, but oh well, what can you do? I have high hopes for the next movie and can wait to see what'll happen to Miles next. That's about it. As always, like, subscribe, comment, share, do what you want. Keep nailing it, and remember, chai means tea, people.